G'day all, bit of an impromptu video this week due to us being stuck home and in isolation, so welcome to my backyard, and I'm going to do a bike check on my newest bike, which is the 2022 Norco Range. So I put a poll up asking what bike people wanted a bike check of, and more than half of you said this bike, so let's dive in. 2022 Norco Range. I was one of the first people to get one. People asked how I managed that, and that's because I ordered it well before the bike was even announced. I just knew they had something cool coming and there were some prototype spy shots around, and I thought, you know, I might as well just jump on that. And I wasn't disappointed when they did release the specs, because it is kind of everything you'd want in a really big hitting super enduro bike. So 170mm travel front, 170mm travel rear, coil standard, and it's the high pivot design, which we're seeing more manufacturers coming out with. High pivot means the chain comes up and over this idler, and the pivot is actually there instead of being, you know, a bit lower down on a traditional bike. And that lets the rear end move backwards and get out of the way of bumps when it's compressed. And it also means there's no kickback at all. So when you compress the suspension, you can see that the pedals don't move at all. How that feels on the trail, as my neighbour's starting up his leaf blower. So how that feels on the trail is, I find it just gives the bike really good stability. The rear end feels always really predictable and really sorted, and you can just rely on the bike to kind of do what you ask it to. I'll get a bit more into the ride impressions when I get around to doing a longer term review, but you can check out my first ride impression video, which I shot a few months back. As far as the frame details go, this is the C2 model, which comes in this brown color. I didn't get a choice of which model I got. If I wanted a range, it was going to be this one. And I think it came up really, really nice, and certainly gets a lot of attention because it's fairly unique looking with the orange suspension as well. Unlike some of Norco's other bikes, it's a full carbon frame. So that means that the chain stays and the seat stays are carbon. Reach is a 480 reach, which fits me really well. I'm a 6 foot tall rider, and I can't remember what the chain stays are. 447mm, I think, maybe 442. Anyway, 63.25 degree head angle, and Norco do a slightly different head angle on the size. So bigger sizes get a slacker head angle, smaller sizes get a slightly steeper head angle, and that's meant to make the bike ride in the same way no matter what size it is. They do the same with the chainstay length and the same with the seat angle, so everyone regardless of size should get a really similar feeling ride out of it. So we'll dive into some of the details. I'll take you through each of the parts, and I'll talk a little bit about why I chose those parts. Okay, let's start with the cockpit of the bike. So the bars are Chromag BZA carbon bars. They're cut to 780 width, and they're a 25mm rise bar. And then I'm running the standard Norco 40mm stem. If you'd seen my videos of testing this bike, I was running different bar and stem combos a lot. This is kind of what I've settled on, which is pretty close to how it ships, but I didn't really get on with the geometry of the Dady bars. So these Chromags have a really nice feel to them, and they've also got the geometry that I kind of like. The grips are Ergon GE1 factory slim grips. They're a real nice compound. The pattern works well with or without gloves. The dropper remote is a wolf tooth. It's really nice made. I've got it on a few of my bikes and it just works really well. In the stem, I've got the EDC Light tool. That's the one that uses the star nut, as I found the regular EDC gets jammed in the oval steerer of the Fox 38s, which was something I wasn't expecting. Garmin 130 bike computer, and it's sitting on a K-edge mount, which gives it this kind of really nice position. The headset somewhere where Norco really do save their money. The FSAs that they ship with are just garbage on most bikes. So in this case, I swapped it out for a Cane Creek 110. That was all the bike shop had. It's the top of the line one, and it is awesome. I think it's as good as a Chris King, if not better. So the brakes are actually something I've had to change since I built the bike. I built it with an old set of Saints, but they started leaking, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fix them, which is unfortunate because they looked awesome and they had awesome power. But yeah, I've just swapped them to the current model XT 4-piston brakes, which again have a fair bit of power. The brakes are stopping with 200mm rotors, and I'm running the metallic pads. I run Shimano brakes just because they're the easiest to get on with. They're really reliable, and I don't have really a problem with their, you know, lack of modulation compared to some other brakes out there. I would always choose reliability over everything else, and the Shimanos give that. I would be interested in trying a 220mm rotor, so I might try a rotor from a different brand when I get around to it, because more power is just more, especially on a bike like this. The drivetrain, so I've got XTR shifter, which I had lying around at home, and I had to buy an XTR derailleur because that's all that was available. Cassette is XT, and so are the cranks. That's a 32 tooth chainring and a 170mm crank. And they're Shimano Saint SPD pedals. I've been running clip pedals for about 3 years now, and I run them pretty loose, being flat pedal background. And I like the Saints because one, they're built really well, and two, if you're unclipped, they've got a big platform which you can get plenty of grip on if you do need to ride a section with the foot out. For the wheels and tyres, so DT Swiss 511 rims, and they're laced to White Industry hubs, which are not a very common brand of hub. They're made in the US, they're fairly small batch, and I've had them for a really long time. They're really nice quality, and I've received very good service from them. I had the hub body break earlier in the year. The hubs are about 6 or 7 years old, and they sent one out, no charge, no questions asked, and I was back running again once I'd laced it back up. Front tyre, Maxxis Assegai, that's pretty much all I run up front these days, and this particular one is a double down. I would have run a DH casing because I prefer the feeling of that casing over double down casing, but this is all that I could get at the time. Max Grip compound to match the rear. I don't run any inserts on this bike. I run about 25 PSI up front for my 80 kilo weight. Rear tyre, Maxxis DH R2. It's my favorite rear tyre as well for gravity riding, and this one is a DH casing. I just find the DH casing has a more dead feel compared with the double down. Max Grip compound on the rear. Yes, it wears out quick, but the grip is, yeah, you can't compare the grip to a Max Terra. Again, I'm running no insert in the rear. I'm sort of thinking about maybe putting a Cushcore XC in just for that extra level of protection, but so far so good, and you know, I don't rim strike too often and very rarely flat, or I've actually never flatted with a downhill casing rear tyre. And at the rear I run 28 PSI. Okay, onto the suspension, and that's a 170mm Fox 38 fork. I run it pretty soft, I think about 92 to 95 PSI and 2 tokens, which is, you know, about 10 PSI above body weight, a little under what Fox recommends, but around what Norco recommends. And then I run the clicker settings, the compression pretty open, and the rebound pretty fast. I switched to the 38 just before I got this bike, and I really like it. It's slightly stiffer than the 36. Yeah, it just has a really smooth feel to it. So big thumbs up from me on that fork, and I think the orange just looks sick with the brown frame, so why not? And then the shock is what comes with the bike. So that's a DHX2 coil shock. They say that you shouldn't run an air shock on this bike, and I don't really see the reason why anyone would want to do that. It's plenty progressive, and it pedals, you know, about as well as you could expect for a bike of this weight and this intent. That's the standard 550 spring, though it is the SLS, which is the lighter spring from Fox, and again, mostly bought for aesthetic reasons. That orange pop in the middle of the bike just looks awesome. Speaking of the bike popping, so that's a gloss ride wrap. I put the gloss on because the frame is matte. You can see the kind of original frame color there. And I think it just brings it up a bit. Yeah, it looks really sick, gives it some protection. Ride wrap's pretty easy to fit, and they're probably, I think they're the best quality of the wraps that I've tried. 200mm dropper, I think it's a Trans X, and then that's just the standard saddle that comes on it, which is an Ergon SM10 Enduro. I'd normally run a Chromag saddle, which I find slightly more comfortable, but yeah, I can't find them in stock anywhere. So if you know anywhere I can get a Lynx saddle that'd match this bike, give me a shout. Cool, so that's the end of the bike check. I hope you enjoyed it. If I missed anything, drop it in the comments below and I'll reply to you. I'll hopefully be out of ISO next week and be able to start shooting some more riding videos. But until then, thanks for watching.